The first time my husband called me an embarrassment, he whispered it so quietly that no one else at the table heard him. The last time he said it, he didn't bother lowering his voice. I don't want you anywhere near Olivia's wedding this weekend. His words floated across our kitchen with the same casual tone someone might use to remind another person to buy milk on the way home. I looked up from the coffee mug, warming my hands. I'm sorry. What? Ryan Mercer didn't even look away from his phone. You heard me. I waited for him to laugh. He didn't. Outside our kitchen window, the Seattle rain tapped softly against the glass while our golden retriever slept beside the patio door, completely unaware that 11 years of marriage had just changed forever. I thought you were joking. I'm not. He finally raised his eyes. His expression wasn't angry. It was worse. It was embarrassed. My mother doesn't want you there. Silence. My sister agrees. Another silence. And honestly, he sighed, rubbing his forehead, I agree too. I felt something inside my chest sink. For 11 years, I've supported every family event. I know. I've never missed Thanksgiving. I know. I helped plan Olivia's engagement dinner. I know. I spent 6 months helping your mother after her surgery. I know. So why exactly am I suddenly an embarrassment? Ryan placed his phone face down. Victoria. He only used my full name when he wanted to sound patient. People notice things. What things? You don't fit. I blinked. I don't fit? My family has a certain image. I almost laughed. A certain image? Successful. I stared at him. He continued. Everyone there owns businesses, investment firms, medical practices, law offices. And? You quit your architecture job 3 years ago. I did. You work from home. I do. No one really knows what you do. That's true. My relatives keep asking if I'm supporting you. I nodded slowly. So, that's what this is about. Ryan leaned back. You could have at least tried making something of yourself. The sentence landed harder than I expected, because there had once been a time when he knew exactly what I had given up for him. Years ago, when Ryan wanted to leave his accounting job and start his own consulting company, someone had needed a stable income. Someone had worked late nights. Someone had skipped promotions. Someone had quietly paid bills while pretending everything was easy. That someone had been me. But apparently memories expire. I didn't realize my career determined whether I deserved to attend a family wedding. It doesn't. It sounds like it does. It determines whether people respect you. I smiled. Not because anything was funny, because I had suddenly realized something. Ryan genuinely believed I had failed in life, and somehow, that hurt less than the fact he'd never once asked what I actually did every day. He had simply assumed. 3 years, 3 entire years, not one question, not one conversation, not even curiosity. What exactly have you been telling your family about me? He hesitated. Ryan. He looked away. I told them you left your job because the stress became too much. I nodded. And? I said you're trying to figure things out. And I might have mentioned I've been covering most of our expenses. I looked at him, then around the kitchen, the marble countertops, the custom cabinets, the lakefront home, the luxury SUV parked outside, the vacations, the renovations, the furniture, everything I had quietly paid for. I see. I didn't mean... No, I interrupted softly. I think you meant exactly what you said. He stood. I don't want drama at Olivia's wedding. I've never caused drama. My mother says your clothes aren't appropriate. My clothes? You always dress simple. I almost smiled again. Simple. The cream-colored sweater I wore had been handmade by an Italian designer. The jeans he'd criticized cost more than the watch on his wrist. The leather boots sitting beside the door had been custom-made in Florence. The only difference. Mine didn't have giant logos screaming their prices. Ryan had always confused quiet wealth with having no wealth at all. I already told Olivia you won't be coming. He picked up his keys. So don't make this harder than it needs to be. The front door closed. The house became silent. I remained in the kitchen for several minutes before walking upstairs. Not crying, not yelling, just thinking. Inside my office, sunlight fought through the gray clouds outside. My laptop displayed dozens of unread emails. One immediately caught my attention. Closing confirmation, Mercer Harbor Financial Holdings. I opened it. The acquisition had officially been completed. Every document was signed, every transfer approved, every payment cleared. I leaned back in my chair. Interesting timing. Very interesting timing. My phone buzzed. Nathan, my attorney. Good morning, Victoria. Morning. I wanted to personally congratulate you. Everything finalized? About an hour ago. No complications? None. He chuckled. I still can't believe nobody realized who was purchasing the holding company. They weren't supposed to. Your confidentiality agreements worked perfectly. I looked out toward the lake. What happens now? Nothing. Nothing? Exactly. Nobody needs to know? Not unless you want them to. I smiled. No. There's one interesting detail. What? Nathan hesitated. You probably don't recognize one of the assets that came with the acquisition. I haven't reviewed everything yet. You should. He sent me a document. I opened it. Hundreds of properties, commercial buildings, office spaces, investment portfolios, hotels, retail centers. Then one address froze me. Mercer Estate, Bellevue, Washington. I stared at the screen. That couldn't be right. I zoomed in. It was. Ryan's childhood home, his mother's mansion. The place where every Christmas dinner had been held. The place where Olivia's wedding rehearsal dinner would take place in just 3 days. The estate wasn't owned directly by Patricia Mercer. It belonged to a holding company. The holding company belonged to another corporation. And as of 1 hour ago, I owned that corporation. I closed my eyes. What are the odds? Nathan laughed softly. I had the exact same reaction. So, technically, yes, I own the estate. Legally. Completely. I didn't speak for several seconds. Nathan finally asked, "What would you like to do?" I looked again at the family photo sitting on my desk. Ryan and me, taken 8 years earlier, back when he used to look at me like I was the luckiest thing that had ever happened to him. I don't know. Take your time. I'm not interested in revenge. I know. But he paused. After what your husband said this morning, I frowned. How do you know about that? You called sounding different. I smiled faintly. I guess I did. Victoria? Yes? Sometimes life has a strange sense of timing. After hanging up, I sat alone in absolute silence. 3 days until the wedding. 3 days until everyone celebrated becoming one big happy family. 3 days. Before any of them discovered that the woman they had just decided didn't belong had unknowingly become the owner of the place where they planned to celebrate. The next morning, I woke up at 6, just as I had every weekday for the past 11 years. Old habits don't disappear simply because your heart breaks. I made coffee, fed Charlie, our golden retriever, opened the curtains overlooking Lake Washington. The house was quiet. Ryan had left before sunrise without saying goodbye. That, somehow, wasn't unusual anymore. What was unusual was the silence inside me. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was disappointed. There's a difference. Anger makes you react. Disappointment makes you see people for who they really are. I carried my coffee upstairs to my office and opened my laptop. Within seconds, my calendar filled the screen. 9 video meetings, 3 acquisition reviews, a charity board presentation, and a final approval for a luxury waterfront development in California. Most people believed I spent my days browsing the internet from home. In reality, more than 600 employees worked for companies that ultimately reported to me. They just didn't know my name. Neither did Ryan. That had been my choice. When we got married, success had never mattered to either of us. We rented a tiny apartment in Tacoma, shared one old Honda, counted every dollar. Sometimes we couldn't even afford dinner dates. Instead, we'd buy cheap ice cream and sit on the hood of the car watching the sunset. Back then, Ryan used to tell me, "Promise me one thing." What? If either of us ever becomes rich, we won't let money change us. I had promised. He had forgotten. At exactly 9 o'clock, my assistant, Melissa, appeared on the screen. "Good morning, Ms. Hayes." "Morning." She smiled. "Everything ready for today's board meeting? Any urgent issues?" "Only one." She hesitated. "The Mercer Harbor acquisition has attracted attention." I nodded. I expected that. No one knows the buyer. They won't. She glanced down at another document. There is one interesting request. What is it? The previous owners have asked whether the new ownership intends to keep existing management. I smiled faintly. They're worried. A little. Tell them everyone keeps their jobs. You don't want changes? I never punish innocent employees. Melissa smiled. That's why people love working for you. After the meeting ended, I drove downtown. Not because I had to, because I needed fresh air. Seattle buzzed with its usual energy. Coffee shops overflowed with people. Construction cranes stretched across the skyline. Tourists filled Pike Place Market. No one recognized me. I preferred it that way. As I stepped into a small bookstore I'd loved for years, someone called my name. Victoria. I turned. Sophia? She rushed over and hugged me. Sophia Grant had been my college roommate, the only person outside my executive team who knew the truth about my businesses. It's been forever. I know. She stepped back and studied my face. Something's wrong. I laughed softly. Am I that obvious? Only to me. We walked into the cafe inside the bookstore. 10 minutes later, she knew everything. Ryan. The wedding. The embarrassment. The invitation. Or rather, the lack of one. Sophia stared at me in disbelief. He actually said that? He did. And his family believes you're unemployed? Apparently. She rubbed her temples. I'm trying very hard not to drive to his office. I laughed for the first time in 2 days. Please don't. I've met arrogant people. She shook her head. But it's okay. No, Victoria, it isn't. She leaned closer. You built one of the fastest growing private investment firms on the West Coast. I smiled. Quietly. You donated $40 million to children's hospitals. Anonymously. You paid for your father's cancer treatment. I was lucky enough too. You've funded scholarships across 3 states. No one needs to know. And your husband thinks you're living off him? I looked down at my coffee. He never asked. Sophia became quiet. Then she asked something I hadn't expected. Why did you hide everything from him? I took a long breath. Because the man I married didn't care about money. And now? I looked out the window. I'm beginning to wonder when that man disappeared. My phone vibrated. Ryan, I almost ignored it. Almost. Hello? We need to talk. I'm listening. My mother wants the spare house keys. For what? The florist is dropping off decorations tomorrow. So? They'll be using the lake house for storage. Our lake house? It's temporary. I frowned. You volunteered our home without asking me? It's only for 2 days. I already have meetings. You work from home. So? You'll manage. The call ended. No goodbye. No thank you. Nothing. Sophia had heard enough through the speaker. Did he seriously just volunteer your house? Apparently. She looked horrified. Victoria. I knew exactly what she was about to ask. No. You haven't even considered divorce. I've considered honesty. And if honesty changes nothing? I didn't answer. Because for the first time, I wasn't sure. That afternoon, I returned home. The driveway was already crowded. 3 delivery trucks, a flower company, a catering van, workers carrying expensive decorations inside my house. No one had asked permission. One woman walked past me holding crystal centerpieces. Where should these go? I smiled politely. I'm actually not sure. She frowned. I thought you lived here. I do. Before she could respond, Patricia Mercer stepped through the front door wearing oversized sunglasses and a white designer suit. She glanced at me for barely a second. Oh. There wasn't an ounce of warmth in her voice. You're home. I live here. Ryan said you'd stay out of the way. I looked around as strangers filled every room. Apparently there was some confusion. Patricia ignored the comment. She clapped her hands at the workers. No fingerprints on those mirrors. Then she looked back at me. You might want to wear something nicer. I'm not attending the wedding. I know. She smiled. It'll save everyone an awkward conversation. I nodded slowly. I suppose it will. She stepped closer. You know, her voice dropped. I've always believed my son deserved someone more accomplished. I met her eyes. I know. You never had ambition. Interesting, She had absolutely no idea. Patricia adjusted her handbag. I just wanted to say there's no hard feelings. No hard feelings. After banning me from the wedding, after taking over my home, after calling me an embarrassment. I smiled politely. I appreciate that. She seemed satisfied. Then she walked away. A few seconds later, my phone buzzed again. Nathan. I have an update. What happened? The title transfer has officially been recorded. So everything is complete? Yes. There is now no legal path to reverse it. I looked across my living room. Patricia was laughing with the wedding planner while pointing at furniture I had personally chosen. Nathan spoke again. Victoria? Yes? From this moment forward. He paused. Every decision regarding the Mercer estate legally belongs to you. I watched Patricia smile as if she owned the world. She had no idea. That legally, she no longer owned the roof over her head. By Thursday morning, my home no longer felt like my home. Garment bags lined the hallway. Fresh flowers covered nearly every flat surface. Wedding planners walked through the kitchen with clipboards as if they owned the place. Every few minutes, someone asked where another box should go. No one asked whether they should be there at all. I quietly moved my laptop to the upstairs office and closed the door. The silence lasted exactly 12 minutes. A knock interrupted my first meeting. Before I could answer, the door opened. Ryan stepped inside. Were you in a meeting? I was. He glanced at the screen where half a dozen executives were waiting. Can this wait? I muted my microphone. What is it? My mother needs your closet. My closet? The bridesmaids' dresses won't fit downstairs. I stared at him. My closet is full. So move your things. I blinked. You want me to empty my closet in my own house? He sighed impatiently. It's just for one day. No. His eyebrows lifted. What? I said no. For a moment, he looked genuinely surprised. You've never said no before. I know. He folded his arms. Victoria, don't start this. I'm not starting anything. My sister's wedding is tomorrow. And, can you please stop making everything difficult? I almost laughed. I've been working quietly upstairs while strangers take over my home. It's family. I'm your family too. The words hung between us. Ryan looked away first. I don't have time for this. Neither did I. I unmuted my microphone. I'm sorry, everyone. Let's continue. Ryan stood there another few seconds before walking out. He didn't apologize. He never did anymore. When the meeting ended, Melissa stayed behind. I hope I'm not overstepping. Go ahead. You don't sound happy. I've had better weeks. She hesitated. I've worked for you 8 years. I know. I've never once heard you raise your voice. I don't like yelling. But today, she smiled sadly. You finally said no. After the call ended, I leaned back in my chair. Maybe she was right. Maybe something had changed. Not because Ryan had insulted me, because I'd finally stopped trying to earn respect from people who had already decided I didn't deserve it. That afternoon, I drove to Bellevue. Not to visit Patricia, not to confront anyone. I simply wanted to see the estate with different eyes. The iron gates opened automatically after security confirmed my appointment. The mansion stood exactly as it always had. Tall white columns, perfect gardens. A fountain Ryan's father had imported from Italy 20 years earlier. It was beautiful. It was elegant. And legally, it belonged to one of my companies. Nathan was already waiting near the entrance. He handed me a leather folder. Everything you requested. I looked through the documents, property records, corporate ownership, financial statements, insurance policies. One detail caught my attention. The mortgage? Nathan nodded. There isn't one. So, Patricia owns it free and clear. Not exactly. What do you mean? The estate wasn't personally owned. He pointed to another page. The Mercer family transferred it into a holding company years ago for tax purposes. I know. That holding company failed last year, and no one noticed. They refinanced other businesses instead. He smiled slightly. When you acquired the parent company, the estate came with it. He nodded, without anyone realizing. I looked toward the mansion. Through the front windows, I could see workers decorating the grand staircase with white roses. Tomorrow evening, hundreds of guests would arrive believing the Mercer family owned everything around them. None of them knew the truth. Nathan cleared his throat. I should mention something. What is it? Patricia's attorneys contacted us this morning. My eyes narrowed. They know. No. They wanted to introduce themselves to the new owners. And they requested a meeting after the wedding. I smiled. Interesting. They're hoping to negotiate long-term ownership. I'll think about it. Nathan studied me carefully. Victoria. Yes? If this were anyone else. I know. You could legally ask them to vacate. I know. You could sell the property. I know. You could double the lease. I know. But you won't. I closed the folder. No. He smiled. I didn't think so. As we walked toward the garden, voices echoed from the back terrace. Patricia, Olivia, several bridesmaids, none of them had seen us. We instinctively stopped. I still can't believe she's actually staying away. Olivia laughed. I told Ryan she'd finally understand she doesn't belong. One bridesmaid asked, Is she really unemployed? Patricia answered before anyone else could. As far as anyone can tell. They all laughed. Another woman spoke. I always thought she married Ryan for money. Patricia smiled proudly. My son has always attracted women looking for security. Something inside my chest tightened. Not because strangers believed it, because Ryan had allowed them to. Maybe even encouraged it. Olivia picked up a champagne glass. Tomorrow will be perfect. It certainly will. Patricia raised her own glass. To keeping embarrassing people far away from our family. The women clinked their glasses together. Nathan quietly looked at me. Should we leave? For several seconds I couldn't move. Then, I turned away. Without saying a word, without revealing who I was, without letting them know I'd heard every sentence. As we reached the front gate, Nathan spoke carefully. I've seen billion-dollar negotiations. I know. I've seen hostile takeovers. I know. I've never seen someone stay this calm. I smiled faintly. My father used to tell me something. What? When people underestimate you, don't interrupt them. Nathan nodded slowly. Smart man. He was. Back at home, I found Ryan trying on his tuxedo in the bedroom mirror. He looked over his shoulder. How was your day? The question almost sounded normal. It was productive. Good. He adjusted his tie. You'll be all right here tomorrow? I'll survive. He hesitated. I didn't mean to hurt you. I looked at him. No? He sighed. My family is complicated. No, Ryan, I said quietly. They're actually very simple. He frowned. What does that mean? It means they treat people according to what they think those people are worth. He looked uncomfortable. That's not fair. Isn't it? He didn't answer. Instead, he picked up a velvet box from the dresser. Inside was an elegant diamond necklace. For Olivia, he said. It's beautiful. It cost almost $80,000. I nodded politely. He smiled proudly. I wanted everyone to know our family doesn't hold back on important occasions. I looked at the necklace, then at him. He had no idea. That less than 24 hours earlier, I had quietly signed paperwork worth nearly $900 million. And somehow, he still believed he was the successful one. Late that night, after Ryan had fallen asleep, my phone lit up. A message from Nathan. Everything is ready. I'll follow your instructions tomorrow. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I typed just one sentence. No surprises unless absolutely necessary. He replied almost immediately. Understood. But sometimes the truth arrives on its own. I set the phone down. Tomorrow was the wedding. And for the first time in 11 years, I had no idea what the next day would bring. Friday arrived with clear skies. For the first time all week, Seattle wasn't covered in rain. The sunlight pouring through the bedroom windows should have felt hopeful. Instead, it felt like the calm before something neither I nor anyone else could stop. Ryan was already dressed when I walked downstairs. His charcoal tuxedo fit perfectly. He looked handsome. He looked exactly like the man I had fallen in love with 11 years ago. For one brief second, I wondered if he would change his mind, if he would walk over, take my hand, and say, "Forget everything I said. You're my wife. You're coming with me." Instead, he adjusted his cufflinks. The ceremony starts at 4. I nodded. I know. There'll be reporters. I figured. My mother doesn't want any unnecessary attention. I smiled politely. She doesn't have to worry about me. He picked up his car keys. Thank you. Not, I'm sorry. Not, I was wrong. Just, thank you. He kissed Charlie on the head, walked to the front door, paused for half a second, then left. The sound of the front door closing echoed through the house. I stood perfectly still. After a few moments, I walked into the kitchen and poured myself another cup of coffee. My phone rang. Nathan. Good morning. Morning. Everything quiet? So far. I thought you'd like to know something. What? The Mercer estate has officially transferred into our active management portfolio as of 8 o'clock this morning. So it's complete? Completely. And Patricia still doesn't know? No. I looked out toward the lake. Good. Nathan hesitated. There is one more thing. I'm listening. The estate's insurance policy required an ownership verification this morning. And the event coordinator signed for it. They still didn't notice. They assumed it was routine paperwork. I couldn't help smiling. Sometimes the biggest truths hide inside the smallest details. Around noon, Sophia arrived carrying lunch. I figured you shouldn't spend today alone. You know me too well. She placed 2 sandwiches on the kitchen island. So, how are you really? I thought for a moment. I feel strangely peaceful. She looked surprised. Peaceful? I spent 3 days wondering whether I should fight to stay in a place where I clearly wasn't wanted. And I don't want to fight anymore. She nodded slowly. I think that's healthy. I finally realized something. What? When someone keeps proving who they are, she finished the sentence for me. Believe them. Exactly. At 3:30 that afternoon, the wedding guests began arriving at the Mercer estate. Luxury cars filled the circular driveway. Professional photographers moved through the gardens. A string quartet played beneath white flower arches. Champagne flowed before the ceremony had even begun. Patricia greeted every guest with practiced elegance. Ryan stood beside his mother, shaking hands and smiling for photographs. Everyone looked happy, everyone looked successful. Everyone looked exactly as Patricia had always wanted. Inside the bridal suite, Olivia admired herself in the mirror. This is perfect. It is, Patricia replied. The only thing missing, Olivia laughed, is unnecessary drama. The room erupted with quiet laughter. Meanwhile, 20 miles away, I changed into a midnight blue evening gown. Simple, elegant, no oversized jewelry, no flashy designer logos, just timeless style. Sophia watched me fasten a pair of diamond earrings. They're beautiful. They belong to my grandmother. You look incredible. I feel like myself again. She smiled. That's even better. Before leaving, I picked up a small cream-colored envelope from my desk. Inside was a handwritten letter. Nothing more, nothing less. No legal documents. No threats, just words. Words I'd spent most of the previous night writing. As we reached the front door, my phone buzzed. Nathan. The ceremony has started. I looked at the envelope in my hand. Thank you. I'll be nearby if you need me. I appreciate it. We're following your instructions. No interruptions. Unless necessary. Exactly. The ceremony lasted 30 minutes. Friends applauded. Family cried. The bride and groom kissed. Photographers captured every smile. To anyone watching, it was a perfect wedding. An hour later, the reception began beneath a glass pavilion overlooking the estate gardens. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead. A jazz band filled the air with music. Servers carried silver trays through the crowd. Patricia stood to make the first toast. My family has always believed that success means surrounding yourself with people who lift you higher. Guests raised their glasses. She continued. Today, Olivia begins a new chapter surrounded by exactly those kinds of people. Applause echoed through the pavilion. Ryan smiled proudly. Then, one of the estate's senior staff members approached Patricia. He whispered something into her ear. Her smile disappeared. What? He whispered again. She frowned. I'm busy. I'm sorry, ma'am. It can't wait. Several nearby guests noticed the change. Patricia excused herself and walked toward the entrance. Ryan followed. So did Olivia. Outside the pavilion stood a well-dressed man carrying a leather portfolio. Patricia forced a smile. Can I help you? Good evening. He handed her a business card. I'm Michael Reeves. I represent Harbor Legacy Property Management. Patricia glanced at the card without recognizing the company. Is there a problem? I'm looking for the acting representative of the Mercer estate. That's me. I'm afraid, he spoke calmly. That's no longer accurate. Patricia laughed politely. I think you've made a mistake. I assure you I haven't. Ryan stepped forward. What exactly is this about? Michael opened the portfolio. There has been a recent change in ownership. Patricia's expression hardened. Ownership of what? The Mercer estate. Silence. Ryan frowned. My mother owns this property. Michael remained perfectly professional. According to county records, he removed a certified document. The estate is now owned by Harbor Legacy Holdings. Patricia stared at the papers. That's impossible. The transfer became effective this morning. Her hands began trembling. No. She shook her head. No, there must be some mistake. There isn't. Guests had begun gathering nearby. Whispers spread across the reception. Ryan looked from the documents to the mansion behind him. What does this mean? Michael answered carefully. It means future arrangements regarding this property must be discussed with the owner. Patricia's face turned pale. Who? Michael closed the folder. I'm not authorized to disclose that information. Ryan took a step closer. Then who is? Michael looked toward the entrance of the garden. She is. Almost instinctively, every head turned in the same direction, and at that exact moment, a black sedan slowly pulled into the circular driveway. The black sedan came to a smooth stop beneath the stone entrance. For several seconds, no one moved. The string quartet had stopped playing. Conversations faded into silence. Even the photographers lowered their cameras, sensing that something unexpected was happening. The driver stepped out first and opened the rear door. I slowly stepped onto the driveway. The evening breeze lifted a strand of my hair as I looked toward the crowd. More than 200 guests stood frozen. Ryan stared at me as though he couldn't understand why I was there. Patricia's expression shifted from confusion to anger. What is she doing here? No one answered. I walked calmly toward the entrance, neither rushing nor hesitating. My heels echoed across the stone pathway. Every pair of eyes followed me. When I reached the front steps, Michael Reeves nodded respectfully. Good evening, Ms. Hayes. Good evening, Michael. That single sentence changed the atmosphere. Ryan frowned. You know him? I looked at Ryan but didn't answer. Instead, I turned to Michael. Has everything been explained? As requested, only the ownership change. Thank you. Patricia stepped forward before anyone else could speak. I don't know what game this is, but this is my family's property. Michael remained perfectly composed. Ma'am, I assure you this isn't a game. She snatched the folder from his hands. There has to be an error. Page after page, she searched desperately for something that wasn't there. Finally, she looked up. Who owns Harbor Legacy Holdings? Michael didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked toward me. That information may now be disclosed. Patricia followed his gaze. Her eyes slowly widened. No? She laughed nervously. No, that's ridiculous. Ryan looked between us. What is happening? Michael spoke clearly enough for everyone nearby to hear. The sole owner of Harbor Legacy Holdings, he paused, is Ms. Victoria Hayes. The silence that followed felt endless. One champagne glass slipped from someone's hand and shattered against the stone floor. No one even looked down. Ryan blinked several times. What? Patricia shook her head violently. Impossible! Michael handed Ryan another certified document. The ownership records were filed this morning. Ryan scanned the first page, then the second, then the signature. My signature. His hands slowly dropped to his sides. You... His voice barely worked. You own this place? I answered quietly. I didn't buy your mother's home. Everyone waited. I acquired a holding company. I looked toward Patricia. This estate happened to be one of its assets. Patricia's face had lost all color. No, she whispered. This can't be happening. Guests began murmuring among themselves. Did he say she owns the estate? I thought she didn't even have a job. I heard Ryan was supporting her. Then who is she? The whispers grew louder. Ryan finally looked directly at me. Victoria. For the first time in days, he sounded uncertain. Why didn't you tell me? I held his gaze. When exactly should I have? He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. When your family called me lazy? Silence. When your mother said I lacked ambition? Silence. When you told everyone I lived off your income? His shoulders slowly lowered. When you banned me from your sister's wedding because I was an embarrassment? He closed his eyes. I made a mistake. I nodded. You did. Olivia stepped forward, still wearing her wedding dress. Victoria. She looked genuinely shaken. Is this really true? Yes. You own Harbor Legacy? I do. But she looked completely lost. I thought you worked from home. I do. What do you actually do? I build companies. The answer was simple, honest. Nothing more, nothing less. Patricia suddenly pointed toward me. You planned this, her voice echoed across the courtyard. You wanted to humiliate us. I met her eyes. No, don't lie. I bought the holding company 6 weeks ago. Michael quietly nodded. The transaction began long before today's events. I continued. The closing date happened to be this week. Patricia looked at Ryan. Say something. Ryan couldn't, because for the first time since I'd known him, he didn't have an explanation. One of the older guests stepped forward. It was Judge William Harper, a longtime family friend. He adjusted his glasses before looking at Ryan. Son, Ryan turned toward him. Is it true you told everyone your wife was unemployed? Ryan looked down. Yes. And you believed she wasn't successful? Yes. The judge sighed deeply. I've spent 40 years watching people lose fortunes. Everyone listened. It almost never begins with money. He looked directly at Ryan. It begins the moment someone mistakes another person's quietness for weakness. No one argued, because no one could. Ryan slowly walked toward me. I owe you an apology. You do. I was ashamed of you. I know. I believed what everyone else said. I know. His eyes filled with regret. I never stopped to ask who you really were. For a moment, the old Ryan was standing in front of me again, the young man from our tiny apartment, the one who once promised money would never change us. But promises don't disappear all at once. They fade. One choice at a time. Ryan reached for my hand. I gently stepped back. Not dramatically, not angrily, just enough. His hand remained suspended in the air. I don't need this estate. I spoke calmly so everyone could hear. I don't need revenge. Patricia looked confused. Ryan looked hopeful. I slowly removed the cream-colored envelope from my purse. I came here for one reason. I handed it to Ryan. Read it. His hands trembled as he opened the envelope. Inside, there wasn't a lawsuit. There wasn't an eviction notice. There wasn't a financial demand. There was only one handwritten letter. Ryan looked at the first line. And before he had even reached the second paragraph, his entire expression changed. He looked up at me with tears beginning to form in his eyes. Victoria. His voice broke. I didn't know. I know. The courtyard remained completely silent. No one knew what was written inside the letter. But judging by Ryan's face, whatever he had just read was far more painful than losing a mansion. Ryan stood motionless, holding the letter with both hands. The courtyard was so quiet that the sound of the fountain behind us suddenly seemed louder than the voices of 200 guests. His lips trembled as he continued reading. Then he lowered the paper. I don't deserve this. His voice was barely above a whisper. Patricia stepped toward him. What does it say? Ryan didn't answer. Ryan. Still nothing. She reached for the letter, but he instinctively pulled it back. No. Let me see it. He slowly folded the paper. No, Mom. She stared at him. For once, he swallowed hard. This isn't about you. Everyone watched in stunned silence. Ryan turned to me. I never knew. I gave him a sad smile. You never asked. His shoulders dropped. The letter says... He looked at the page again before continuing. That you never wanted anyone to know what you'd built because you wanted to be loved for who you were. No one moved. You wrote that every company you created, every investment you made, every success you had, his voice cracked, was something you hoped to share with me someday. A tear rolled down his cheek, but only after you were certain I still loved the same woman I married. He looked directly into my eyes, and I failed. I didn't interrupt him because he was finally saying the truth himself. Ryan took a shaky breath. You also wrote, he glanced down once more, that the saddest part wasn't being uninvited to the wedding. Another pause. It was realizing your own husband believed strangers before he believed his wife. The words landed harder than anything else that evening. Several guests quietly looked away. Patricia's confident posture began to disappear. She had spent years judging me without ever asking a single question. But Ryan had lived beside me. He had watched me every day, and he had still chosen assumptions over trust. Olivia slowly walked toward me. Her wedding dress brushed gently across the stone path. When she stopped in front of me, her eyes were filled with tears. I owe you an apology. I nodded politely. You do? I believed everything people said. I know. I never gave you a chance. I know. She looked down. You helped me plan this wedding. You asked me to. I can't believe I let this happen. I smiled softly. Neither can I. For the first time all evening, Olivia hugged me. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't for the guests. It wasn't for appearances. It felt real. When she stepped back, Patricia looked horrified. Olivia! Her daughter turned toward her. No, Mom. Patricia blinked. What? You were wrong. I was protecting this family. Olivia slowly shook her head. No. She glanced toward me. You were protecting your pride. The sentence hit Patricia harder than any legal document ever could. She looked around at the guests. Some avoided eye contact. Others quietly whispered among themselves. For the first time in years, she wasn't the most respected person in the room. She was simply another woman who had judged someone she never understood. Nathan quietly approached me. He spoke softly enough that only I could hear. The paperwork is ready if you wish to proceed. I knew exactly what he meant. I looked toward the mansion, the home where I had spent 11 Christmases, birthday dinners, family celebrations, memories that now felt strangely distant. Then I looked back at Patricia. She suddenly looked older, smaller, not because she had lost her house, because she had lost certainty. I turned back to Nathan. No. He smiled. I thought so. I took a small folder from him and walked toward Patricia. She looked at it nervously. What is that? The future. She frowned. I don't understand. I handed her the folder. Inside was a single agreement, a 99-year lease, $1 per year. Patricia looked up in disbelief. What is this? You can stay. She stared at me. After everything? Yes. Why? I answered without hesitation, because I refused to become the kind of person who humiliated me. A tear escaped Patricia's eye. She tried to speak. Nothing came out. For the first time since I'd met her, she had no clever reply. Only silence. Ryan stepped closer. Victoria! I turned toward him. I don't expect forgiveness. You shouldn't. I know I destroyed your trust. You did. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to earn it back. I looked at him for several long seconds. Then I gently shook my head. Some things, I said quietly, aren't rebuilt by promises. He closed his eyes. I understand. I truly hope you do. There was no shouting, no dramatic goodbye, no revenge, just acceptance. I wished Olivia and her husband a sincere congratulations. I shook hands with a few guests. I thanked Michael and Nathan for their professionalism. Then I turned and walked back toward the waiting car. Halfway there, I heard Ryan call my name one last time. I stopped, but I didn't turn around. I'm sorry. The words echoed through the quiet evening. Real, honest, too late. I closed my eyes for a brief moment. Then I got into the car. As we drove away, I looked through the window one final time. The mansion grew smaller in the distance. So did 11 years of trying to prove my worth to people who had already made up their minds. 6 months later, Harbor Legacy Holdings announced the creation of the Hayes Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to helping women restart their careers after putting their own dreams aside for their families. The foundation quickly expanded across Washington, Oregon, and California. Thousands of women received scholarships, business grants, and professional training. No press release ever mentioned my marriage. No interview ever mentioned the wedding. Those people weren't the story anymore. Hope was. One afternoon, while leaving the foundation's new headquarters, Melissa smiled as she handed me an envelope. It arrived this morning. There was no return address. Inside was a simple handwritten note. It read, "Success didn't reveal who you were. It revealed who everyone else had chosen to become. Thank you for showing us the difference." There was no signature. There didn't need to be. I folded the note carefully and smiled, because in the end, the greatest surprise at Olivia's wedding was never that I owned the mansion. It was that losing the respect of the wrong people made room for the peace I had been searching for all along.